when there's some voice inside you that says, I like this is interesting, I want to try it, follow that, even if it scares you a little bit. One of the things that I found most rewarding from going from applied maths to doing a master's in machine learning was when I started out, I didn't know if I could do it. And then at the end, I looked back and I was like, well, I did it.
Hi, Louise. How are you?
Hi, Rebecca. I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. So I'm interviewing a few people for our Women in AI podcast series. So I'm traveling around the world a bit from my seat here in Paris, and so today I'm speaking to you in South Africa in the Cape Town office. And I've been really lucky to speak to people at different stages of their career. And I think you're the newest addition. So you joined InstaDeep in January. Is that right?
Yeah, 15th of Jan. Fairly new.
So you joined InstaDeep straight after your master's in machine learning and in AI. And you did a research project with us, I think.
Yes, yeah. So it was a structured master's, but there was 3 months of research, and I did that from August to November last year, and then started in Jan.
Okay, great. So that's always a good sign when we have interns returning to be full-time members of the team. So maybe you could let us know. Sorry. Maybe you could let us know a bit about how you got to know about InstaDeep.
Sure. Yeah. Well, there are actually quite a few threads there. So I don't know if you know Arnu, who started the Cape Town office. He did his PhD at Stellenbosch. So there are some ties there, and he gave a few classes for one of our courses. And that's also how some topics at InstaDeep came to be options for our research for our masters. And I was looking at them, I was interested in them. And then I went to the Deep Learning Indaba X, and InstaDeep had such a presence there. They had a really big presence, and they were giving talks and they were engaging. So I actually met the person who would end up being my supervisor there, Claude, and chatted to him. He completely convinced me to change to his topic. And then the rest is history.
Okay, well that's really cool, because I had a chat with someone else as part of this series. He said, if you want to get into AI, you should go to events and go to competitions, and you'll proof that works, that you make connections and get to know new topics. So I'm interested to know. So you said that he convinced you that his topic was interesting enough to do a project in it. So what was it about? What was the topic to begin with, and what about it was interesting?
Right. So the topic was to do with offline multi-agent reinforcement learning, and it was investigating centralization in offline multi-agent reinforcement learning. I actually remember at the Indaba X, the example that Claude used to explain it to me. It was to do with volleyball. So in reinforcement learning, in online reinforcement learning, you would have your agents be the players, and they learn how to play together by, there's a level of trial and error, and then you have your algorithm which points their learning in a certain direction so that they can start getting better. And the way that Claude explained to me offline learning is it's like you take all your players and you show them a bunch of YouTube videos, and then you put them on a court and you're like, cool, what can you do? And which is a simplified version, but I needed that because I was maybe 2 months into reinforcement learning. And he basically said with centralization, you want to know sort of what level of cooperation can these players learn in an offline setting, because they can't interact with each other and adapt strategies in an online way? I found it to be very interesting to see what the capabilities of reinforcement learning are in these different situations.
Yeah. I mean, reinforcement learning is such a vast topic in and of itself. So there you've got quite a lot of things in that one project. So you've just got, reinforcement learning where you've got an agent that's trying to learn from some experience. You've now got a situation where your environment has multiple agents in it that may need to work together. So that's another example. And then the final thing to go to offline. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges there for a 3-month project. So I think it's completely fine that you explored some of them and not all of them. And so what type of things have you been working on in your first couple of months? Have you been working on working on research papers or working on some of the open source codes that InstaDeep has?
Yeah. So for the first month of work, I was basically just learning JAX, which I am now seeing the results of that. JAX has really made training so much faster. So, and it aligns with. So once I've finished the onboarding with learning JAX, and now I'm working on Q-learning for Marva, which is the open source platform for research that InstaDeep is bringing out. Actually, everything's out in the open currently. So if you go onto GitHub, you can see my branch. You can check things out as they happen. But yeah, I've been working on Marva mainly at the moment. And once the system that I've been working on is in Marva, then that's going to be used to run a bunch of experiments. And there are some papers that the whole team's working towards. We've got like 16 people on the team working towards these big goals that I may or may not talk about.
Yeah, that's fine. Especially when the research is part way, it's a bit difficult to be able to say exactly in which direction it's going to go in. But yeah, you mentioned that you were onboarding by learning JAX, and anybody who goes onto the InstaDeep GitHub will see that we're a company that uses a lot of JAX because of the sort of performance improvements we can get out of the speed that can be got from this library. So you mentioned that you spent some time after joining InstaDeep onboarding and learning JAX.
Cool.
Is that something that you'd come across in your courses at university, or is it something that you came across when you came to InstaDeep?
So the only time that I came across JAX in university was when I was at InstaDeep. So there were 2 of us with topics at InstaDeep, and the other guy had to learn JAX, and I did not yet.
Okay. So you saw your future self. But, yeah.
Yes, I saw my future self, and it's a bit of a, like, you have to sink some time into it initially. So I can really understand why I didn't see it before, but the benefits are just, it makes some things that are previously impossible possible. So I understand completely why it's used at InstaDeep so very much.
Yeah, we're definitely a company that uses JAX a lot, and that can be seen in our open source projects, and we've also integrated it into some products. So I guess the challenge of being able to code effectively in JAX is the just-in-time compilation side of it. That's something that we don't really see in maybe some of the other libraries that are often used in university courses. So yeah, like you said, there's a bit of a steep learning curve at the beginning. So when you're at university trying to learn just the concepts of reinforcement learning, it's maybe too much to take on in one go. But is it something that you might suggest to people who are interested in joining the field to read up a bit on before diving in?
Yeah, especially if Jax really utilizes accelerators well. So if you don't have access to an accelerator, it might be less beneficial for you. But in my experience, it's really, really helped a lot. And also, I think a lot of the jump for me was that I have fairly minimal computer science background, which means that last 2 months ago was the first time that I heard about what functional programming is. And that whole way of thinking to shift that there was a little bit of internal resistance to that because I like my object-oriented programming. But now that I feel I understand it, it makes so much sense.
So another thing I was going to ask is, did you face any challenges in the transition from intern to full-time employee? Was that quite seamless, given that it's you're working on similar research questions?
So I found that there were a few differences, definitely. When I was an intern, I wasn't really officially an intern. It was like this combined research project. So I didn't have a key card. We were just showing up and having people let us in, that sort of thing. And then when I started work, there was definitely a whole bunch of admin meetings. I didn't even attend meetings before. So I've been getting used to that. But also the level of responsibility for sure changed. I'm very lucky in that my superiors have trusted me with some work that's fairly integral to the projects that we're doing. And I'm excited, a little bit of imposter syndrome, but my team's been really great. And I think it's the people around me, to some extent, know my capabilities. So they might throw me in the deep end, but they know I know how to swim. I just need to, start doing it.
I think that I've seen that quite a bit at InstaDeep, where you're not going to be given a job if somebody doesn't think you can do it, but they'll know that they're also ready to challenge you. So that I think that's what's exciting. So maybe we could speak about. So you've spoken about your first few weeks and the sort of the challenge of switching from student to employee and being part of a team. What would you say are kind of what advice would you give yourself if you were able to speak to yourself a year ago in terms of things that you've learned?
A year ago,
or someone who's in university at the moment, and maybe who's going to the Indaba, or will go to one of the next Indabas and be like, okay, what advice can you give me?
Well, firstly, yes, do go to the Indaba. Especially if you know you're at all interested. This isn't really advice for myself because it's more something that I've been following and that has worked for me. But when there's some voice inside you that says, I like this is interesting, I want to try it, follow that, even if it scares you a little bit. One of the things that I found most rewarding from going from applied maths to doing a master's in machine learning was when I started out, I didn't know if I could do it. And then at the end, I looked back and I was like, well, I did it. So So one of the biggest things I would say is to not count yourself out before you've tried. Go to the Indabas, meet the people, talk to them. People at the Indabas are so friendly. I'm genuinely quite happy with the journey that got me here. So there's not too much that I would change about it.
Okay, cool. Well, it's been really lovely speaking to you. I'm really excited to see the work that you'll produce in the coming months, and looking forward to reading those coding contributions and paper contributions.
Thanks, Rebecca. It's been lovely to chat to you too. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about my experience, and hopefully meet you in person sometime.
Yep, hopefully one of the offsites.
There we go. All right. Cheers.
Cheers.